All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Yvonne Ritchie. I'm an advisor with the Capacity Development Team for the Growing Canada's Community Canopies Initiative, which is offered through FCM's Green Municipal Fund. Throughout the year, we offer webinars on a variety of topics related to our programs, including today's focus on urban forestry. Through these webinars, we endeavor to bring you inspiring stories and best practices from communities across Canada who are advancing sustainability in their practices and projects. I'm excited to welcome you today to our webinar on biodiversity strategies for resilient urban forests, which we're also pleased to offer alongside World Wildlife Fund Canada. Today, we'll be exploring how tree planting and other urban forestry projects can promote and protect biodiversity, and how applying a biodiversity lens to your projects can create more resilient urban forests and benefit your community. I'll also start just by acknowledging that I'm joining you from my home in Jbuktuk, also known as Halifax, which is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq peoples, and is part of the Wabanaki or Acadian forest. FCM is our head offices are based in Ottawa, and so we also recognize the Algonquin Anishinaabe people as the traditional custodians of the lands where our offices are located. As we begin a conversation today that centers around our relationship to the land and forests, I want to just take a moment to honor and recognize the teachings and practices of Indigenous elders, knowledge keepers, youth, and other Indigenous community members who have for centuries acted as stewards and caretakers of forests, lakes, rivers, and the other natural spaces across what we now call Canada. And I always like to start with an example of how forests can be spaces of healing, connection, and learning for Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities alike. So my colleague has just shared a link in the chat for the National Healing Forest Initiative, which is a way for communities to create green spaces throughout Canada that honor residential school victims, survivors, and their families, and offer places of healing, of education, and of understanding in the spirit of reconciliation. So I'd encourage you to read more about this initiative and take a look at some of the examples of healing forests across Canada. It's of course not the only way that you can embody reconciliation in urban forestry practices, but it might be something that you would be able to implement or partner on in your own community. And of course, if you feel comfortable doing so, I encourage you to share your own acknowledgements in the chat or simply say hello and talk a little bit about your connection to the land that you live on today. A few reminders before we start. So today's event will be taking place in English, but we do have French interpretation available, with thanks to Michael for providing this service for us. If you'd like to join the French interpretation, you can click the interpretation button, which is a little globe icon in the lower right of your screen. Alors aujourd'hui, notre événement aura lieu en anglais. Si vous souhaitez écouter en français, veuillez cliquer sur le bouton d'interprétation qui est en bas à droite de votre écran. C'est un petit globe. Et sélectionnez l'option française. Et merci encore à Michael pour son assistance avec l'interprétation aujourd'hui. Également, si vous l'avez manqué ce matin, nous avons offert un webinaire en français sur le même sujet qu'aujourd'hui. Alors, vous pouvez regarder l'enregistrement de cet webinaire sur notre site web en quelques semaines. For our webinar today, we have a few presentations from guest speakers with some time at the end for audience Q&A. So if you'd like to ask questions of our panelists, I just ask that you submit those to the Q&A box. It makes it easier for us to keep track of them, and then we can ask those during our Q&A period. And you're also welcome to use the chat box to interact with one another, share any resources or ideas, and generally comment as we go along. Finally, if you are an ISA certified arborist and are collecting continuing education units for your certification, this webinar is eligible for one of those units. So we're going to launch a poll now where you can enter your email address that you use to register for the webinar, as well as your certification number, which we'll be able to use to match with the Zoom attendance report and submit to ISA. If you're not ISA certified, this doesn't apply to you, so you can simply ignore the poll or just answer no. So we'll leave that up for just a moment there, and I will jump ahead. So a bit of context just as we get started with this conversation today. Our webinar is being offered through GMF's Growing Canada's Community Canopies Initiative, or GCCC, which supports communities to grow and manage their urban forests in a way that promotes equity and resilience to climate change, as well as, of course, biodiversity. This includes funding for tree planting projects, as well as strategic funding to better plan and manage your urban forests. Apart from funding, we're also pleased to offer capacity development in collaboration with our partner Tree Canada, which includes learning activities such as this webinar and one-on-one coaching support that's offered to all of our funding applicants by urban forestry experts across Canada. We aren't going to spend a lot of time talking about funding today, but I do want to let everyone know that we do currently have an open application period for our urban forestry plans and studies offer. If you are interested in this offer, your community can receive up to $175,000 for developing a plan or a study to better manage, grow, and protect your urban forest. And the application period for this offer is open until mid-April. Although applications are being evaluated on a first-come, first-served basis, so we certainly encourage you to apply early. You can find more information on our website, which has been posted in the chat. And most importantly on the screen, we're going to be offering a drop-in session in a couple of weeks, December 9th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which will give more details about this offer, including what types of projects are eligible, what you need to apply, and so on. So if you're interested in learning more or looking to put forward an application, we encourage you to join us. You can use the QR code on the screen or the link in the chat to sign up for that workshop. All right, so for today, our goal is to dig into the concept of biodiversity and how this relates to urban forestry. We'll be exploring the importance of species diversity and planting native species to build resilience and improve ecosystem health, and going through a couple of different case studies of different approaches to biodiversity-focused tree planting and management with a lens of improving climate resilience. Our hope is that this will inspire you to be able to more intentionally integrate a focus on biodiversity into your future planting projects and urban forest management more broadly. So we are very pleased to be joined by WWF-Canada for this webinar, who are internationally recognized experts in conservation and climate action, and who have a breadth of experience collaborating with community partners to improve biodiversity. In particular, I'm thrilled to introduce Kate Landry, who is the Senior Manager of Community Action for WWF-Canada. Kate and her team have put together an excellent roster of example projects to share with us today that highlight how biodiversity can be supported by intentional project design. To that end, I'm equally excited to introduce Keenan Jewett, the arboriculture foreman from the city of Fredericton, to speak about their approach to growing and managing Fredericton's urban forest with biodiversity and climate resilience in mind, and Sharon McGugan, who is the president of the Garden City Conservation Society, to share her efforts and role as a community organizer in advancing Miyawaki forest restoration projects in the city of Richmond, BC. So welcome to all three of you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to hand things off to you, Kate, to start us off with a little bit more about your work at WWF.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. And hello, everyone. I'm Kate Landry. I'm the Senior Manager for Community Action here at WWF Canada. So really that means my portfolio is everything that we do in order to get folks to take action to support Canada's ecosystems and the wildlife that lives within them. So next slide, please. So when we think about restoration, you're probably thinking about the example on the left. This is actually some trees that I planted. And it's when we try to restore green spaces to be more like the natural areas they once were. That is important, but putting plants in the ground or even in containers, as you see on the right, is equally important for restoration, especially, or it can also be considered restoration, especially when it's happening in areas that are impacted by humans. When we're adding plants, trees into our yards, into our schoolyards, into our community spaces, we're actually helping to create, enhance, and connect the habitat that wildlife needs in order to survive. So in these urban areas, we're actually creating and also connecting habitat for birds, for pollinators, for other types of insects and small mammals. But there is a catch because not all plants are created equal. The best plants and trees are native plants and trees. These are the species that have co evolved together over tens of thousands of years with local wildlife. So they have these really great, deep, intertwined relationships. If we could go to the next slide, please. So if we know native plants and trees are the best one, what actually makes a good quality native plant and tree? Well, the best quality native plant or tree is one that is native to your region, which means that it grows kind of within about 200 kilometers of where you are. The seed that it's getting propagated from, whether it's a plant or a tree, should be sourced from your local area and ideally by somebody who's a trained seed collector. And so they know how to source the seeds in a way that doesn't actually harm the local ecosystem and leaves them behind for the benefit of wildlife. When you're out shopping at a nursery or placing an order, ideally you want to see kind of genetic variation in the stock that you're sourcing from, and you don't want something that's ornamentally cultivated. And finally, the kind of best quality native plant or tree that you can get is one that's grown without pesticides. If you're wondering what actually is native to your area, I've listed three resources there. I often use the VASCAN plant database. It's really super simple. You just enter the name of the tree or the plant that you're looking for into the search bar, and it displays a map showing what its native range is. Like that comes up in green areas and it's orange or red for areas where it's not native. But we also have the North American Native Plant Society, who has a plant species database, as does Network of Nature. And if you're thinking, okay, where do I get native trees and plants? Network of Nature also has a nationwide database of nurseries and retailers who sell them. So I've included a link to a blog that we publish that has some tips and tricks that you can ask when you're sourcing your plants and trees so that you can understand if they're adhering to the criteria that I've listed above. Next slide, please. So you're probably familiar with, or you can guess, why native trees are important for climate resilience, particularly in urban areas. Urban trees contribute to climate change adaptation benefits by providing shade to reduce local temperatures. They also reduce local flood risks by absorbing excess water. And we know that vegetation, and especially trees, play an important role in the urban carbon cycle. They contribute to nature-based carbon sequestration in these landscapes, which are kind of dominated by carbon emissions with all the vehicles that we see around. But did you know that adding a good quality native tree or plant to our landscape also contributes to biodiversity resilience? In fact, as I kind of mentioned at the start, these interspecies relationships that we see from native trees and plants with native wildlife are the cornerstone of our ecosystems. When we see ecosystems that are varied and balanced, they're healthy and we all benefit. And it is possible to do this in urban environments. If you're wondering, are native trees important for biodiversity resilience? Absolutely. I want to share an example of the eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly and the tulip tree. So you might know this, but all butterflies require specific host plants where females lay their eggs and then the larvae or the caterpillars hatch and feed. So the swallowtail selects plants such as the native tulip tree, which has those beautiful iconic flowers that are shaped like their namesake. They're just gorgeous. In Canada, this tree, which grows up to about 35 meters in height, is found in southern Ontario in the Carolinian zone. So that's also where you're going to find the eastern tiger swallowtail. Given their size, tulip trees require a lot of space to grow. And as you can imagine, that could be difficult in such an urban landscape as we see in southern Ontario. But when they're planted and allowed to reach maturity, about 15 years, every part of the tree, from its leaves to its flowers to its seeds, are providing important resources like food and shelter for the eastern tiger, swallowtail butterfly, as well as other invertebrates, birds, and mammals. The butterfly knows it's a place that it can lay its eggs. There's going to be good food there when the caterpillar hatches. And this is kind of the beauty of this interwoven relationship. And if you think about it, the tulip trees can actually live for hundreds of years. And so these interwoven relationships span not only seasons, but actual centuries, because butterflies have this amazing thing in their DNA where they can just pass it down. And other butterflies know to go back to these native tulip trees. Next slide, please, Yvonne. Thanks. So I hope that I've convinced you that native trees are as important for urban biodiversity resilience as they are for climate resilience. You're probably thinking, okay, but what do I do with this information? Well, shortly you'll be hearing from people who are in your shoes. They've been creating and sustaining resilient urban ecosystems with native trees and plants. Keenan will bring his experiences from municipality and Sharon from a community-based organization. Each type of organization has a role to play, and I hope that they'll be encouraging you to be thinking about local groups or maybe friendly civil servants that you can approach in your communities. But there is a third lever that you can pull, and that's your citizens. Every community has individuals who want to be taking action to fight climate change or to support wildlife and biodiversity, but they don't know what to do. These people have yards, they're active in their children's schools, or maybe on their co op or at their place of worship. These are the folks that can be planting native trees and plants in the places where you can't. And actually, they're hungry to do so. They just need some support. And so for this, I want to share WWF's Regrow program. Regrow is a free kind of how-to hub for growing native trees and plants and restoring habitats. Participants can find free guides full of expert advice to help start growing your native plants and trees at home and in your communities. These resources answer questions like where can I find good quality native trees or when is the best time to plant a native tree? And participants can also track their actions, like planting trees, so they can see how these personal actions are laddering up to larger efforts to restore nature in communities across Canada. To date, we have almost 500 native trees planted and almost 10,000 native plants, and we're hoping to grow this. Last slide, please, Yvonne. So I just want to say thank you in closing. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share why native trees and plants are so important for for urban ecosystems. And thank you for allowing me to offer Regrow as one tool in your toolbox to increase the number and diversity of native species in your communities. I hope you'll be inspired by the initiatives that Keenan and Sharon will share, and that you can walk away from this hour with some new ideas. So with that, I'll say over to you, Keenan. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. And thank you everybody for inviting me to share our story. My name's Keenan Jewett from the city of Fredericton. I would say the city of Fredericton is a small municipality, but to some folks it may seem a little bit bigger. So title of my slide today kind of goes with a project we just finished, our urban forest master strategy. And our vision kind of aligns with the conversation today to sustain a biodiverse urban forest throughout the city for a resilient environment and a healthy community. So we'll go on to the next slide. I'm just going to talk a little bit today about the background of our city, some of the challenges we face, and how we can kind of maintain a resilient urban forest, and some of the initiatives and projects that we're doing to go along with this. So we're going to talk about where we work and play. This basically builds our urban forests. These spaces are very important for community engagement and sustainable management. The right of way, this is where our houses are. They play a big role in connecting the neighborhoods, supporting our tree canopy. Our trail network, which we have a fabulous trail network throughout the city, not only provides recreational value, but they also serve as connectivity for habitat for wildlife to share. Our parks and green spaces contribute to mental health, support biodiversity and social activities. Our woodlots provide a number of ecological benefits. We have a beautiful river that runs throughout the city, and the riparian zones are important for the water quality in the wildlife corridors. I just wanted to highlight a couple of our major parks. Odell Park is probably one of our largest urban parks. It's actually located minutes away from the downtown. And as you can see, it's 161 hectares of property. So it's a pretty fabulous park with a very old growth urban or old growth forest. Clardy Lake is kind of a newer, more recreational park. It is bigger than Odell Park, but this is where we try to tend to spend most of our time for recreation. So there's mountain biking, cross-country skiing, there's a lake for swimming. It's endless recreation. Um, these spaces are critical touch points for engaging residents in our urban forest initiatives. They provide visibility in conservation efforts, and the opportunities for education, recreation, and stewardship programs are endless. Next slide, please. So the city of Fredericton has a pretty magnificent tree canopy. We have our inventory, which is just our right-of-way trees of about 23,000 trees. The city-wide canopy cover is 67%. This is a very high percentage, and it plays a vital role in mitigating urban heat island effects, improving air quality, and supporting biodiversity. It reflects the success of long-term planting and strategies that our predecessors have done over the years. Within the urban boundaries, so that is more where the people live, the canopy cover still sits at about a 46%. This is significant to capture this because it shows the impact of development on the tree cover, and maintaining and increasing the canopy in these areas is crucial to sustain the growth and the climate resilience. So together, these metrics provide a snapshot of the city's urban forest, a guide for future planning efforts, and to ensure resilience in the biodiverse environment. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick economical and ecological demonstration of what an urban forest value can actually be placed at. So the key takeaway message with this is just to justify the investment into an urban forest management and deliver the environmental, social, and economic benefits that it provides to our community. Next slide, please. So the challenges facing urban forest, this isn't just the city of Fredericton, this is challenges that we face clear across the country. You know, our trees are facing stress from the rising temperatures, unprecedented weather patterns, extreme weather events and storms. We were even getting a lot of rain or a lot of drought. This past summer here, we had a drought that we've never seen before. So these challenges can reduce the tree health, longevity, requiring adaptative management strategies. The urban heat island effect, you know, the cities have a lot of concrete, a lot of pavement. These urban areas make it significantly warmer than surrounding regions, so the trees help mitigate this effect. But the heat stress can also be harmful on the growth and survival of many trees. Invasive species and pests, so non-native insects and diseases threaten tree populations, often spreading rapidly in urban environments. So proactively managing in an integrated pest management is an essential to protect biodiversity. This is why I emphasize the proactive. It's something that, you know, some of these pests that we're all seeing these days, like the emerald ash borer, it's something that as a municipality, we should be talking way before they end up in our cities. I think we started kind of preaching to our council and our senior management probably 4 years before we ended up detecting it here. So those are valuable lessons that we learned moving forward as, you know, as we see different invasive species target other municipalities. Species diversity is very important. As we've seen in one of the slides earlier, Fredericton has kind of a very threatening population of maples. So 50% of our canopy is maple trees. This can be a huge risk when it comes to pest diseases and climate impacts. So we like to try to follow the guideline, the 30-20-10 rule. So no more than 30% of one species, 20% of one genus, and 10% in one family. So this helps maintain a balance within your urban forest. Urban development pressures, as we all see this happening clear across the country, expansion of infrastructure and housing often leads to tree removal and habitat loss. Strategic planning and collaboration with the developers and planning are key to preserving the canopy. Trees also have conflict with road infrastructure. Utilities can interfere, leading root damage, and also cause the need for tree removal. So solutions include careful selection of the species and engineering designs that accommodate tree growth. So one of the things we have done in our downtown core is started using permavoid tree planting pits, which gives us more of an engineered tree pit to allow proper root growth. Next slide. So this, again, just climate change. I'll quickly go through this. We're seeing temperatures rising. Fredericton is almost 2 degrees. Increase in temperature and over 100 mils per year in precipitation. Native species may struggle to adapt to these new conditions, so we have to be aware of that. Introduction of climate-resistant and Carolinian species through assisted migration is something we need to look at. And importance of maintaining biodiversity and ensure resilience. And also with the invasive species, the pests with the warmer winters allow pests to survive and produce more effectively. And higher pest populations lead to increased tree mortality and management costs. So the need for proactive pest monitoring and integrated pest management strategies is important. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about the heat island and the Odell Park. So you can see with the difference what a dense canopy cover can do on the heat island. So the dark blue is the river that runs through, divides the city, and the Odell Park is almost like a baby blue color. So land surface temperature is critical metrics for understanding the heat island effect. It shows where surface absorbs and retain heat, and often in areas where little vegetation and lots of pavement. So you can see where kind of where people would live in the downtown area, you begin to get it into a more yellow or orange color. Next slide, please. So it's important to work with existing strategies and plans when it comes to urban forests and the urban forest strategy. Avoid duplication, so leveraging existing strategies ensures resources are effectively and avoid overlapping efforts. And community engagement, point out these strategies often and include public engagement components. This is key. This will be integrated into the urban forest initiatives for a stronger community buy-in. So the closing message is position urban forestry as a critical piece in the city's overall resilience to the sustainability puzzle. So working together with all of these plans amplifies the impact and ensures long-term success. Next slide, please. So how can we build and maintain a resilient urban forest? So first of all is shifting the perspective. We like to talk about our urban forest and our trees as green infrastructure rather than just aesthetically there. This approach integrates trees into the urban planning as vital assets. And sometimes that can be easier to get through to different mindsets. Public education, educating residents about the benefits of urban forests and how they contribute to the sustainability. Collaboration with planning and engineering. There needs to be a cross-departmental cooperation. At one point, trees were not even put on a plan for new development. Now trees are identified, and we've already got to the point where open plantable spaces are identified on those plans as well. So that's a great improvement from where we were just probably 6 to 10 years ago. Tree replacement, to make sure we have policies of replacing trees that are removed to maintain that canopy cover and ecological balance. proactive pruning and pest management, planting climate resilient species. So making sure that we have the right species selection that will withstand the changing climate conditions and thrive locally. Planting a diverse range of species, so that 30-20-10 rule, very important. Reduce the vulnerability of pests and diseases, and leverage existing assets. So utilize our trail corridors and other municipal spaces for strategic tree planting to maximize the impact. Next slide, please. So the strategic plan is, the goal is to ensure the long-term resilience and sustainability through clear targets, partnerships, monitoring, community engagement. Setting canopy targets is critical, but making sure that these canopy targets are achievable. It provides measurable goals for the planning efforts and ensures equitable distribution of green cover across neighborhoods. Targets align with the climate resilient and urban cooling strategies. It's important to collaborate with other organizations and other government programs. These partnerships help secure grants and resources for large scale tree planting initiatives. Regular monitoring of tree health and pests, and be able to be adaptive to those management practices. Community involvement is a cornerstone of its success. I can't emphasize this enough. Educational programs, volunteer tree planting events, and stewardship initiatives foster the sense of ownership and encourage residents to care for their urban forest. Next slide. So we talk about some of our tree planting that we've done over the past year. Just wanted to highlight this, the 2025, our typical tree planting would be about 500 new trees planted along our right-of-ways. These are larger calipers like you'd see in the picture. But with a successful acquisition of 2 grants this year, we were able to expand that effort, enabling us to plant an additional 1,000 trees in the fall. So over 1,500 trees this year. We had a strong community engagement demonstrated during our TD tree planting days, where we had volunteers come out with their families on a Saturday morning, and we planted over 170 trees to reforest an area that would typically just bush hogged once a year. Gives an opportunity, and it's actually, the location was right behind one of our newer elementary schools, so the kids were able to get out and continue to look at the forest that they planted. Next slide, please. So plantable areas. This is kind of a neat tool that we started using, LiDAR technology. LiDAR technology provides a canopy height model. Helps us accurately map existing tree cover and identify gaps. So we use this tool in one of our planting projects this summer. The 1,000 additional trees were actually where the pink is on this picture. There's a trail that runs through there. It's along our river. So both sides of the river had basically a large green space with no trees. So this gives us an equitable access to green spaces, promotes social inclusion, mental health, and an overall quality of life. Planting in priority areas helps to mitigate heat islands, manage our stormwater, and increase biodiversity. By using LiDAR and GIS tools, ensures transparency and accountability in the urban forest planning. So plantable areas analysis is not just about where we plant trees, it's also about creating a healthier, more resilient, and inclusive neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this is just another tool that I like. It's the 330-300 guideline for creating a healthier and greener urban environment. It suggests that every resident should be able to see at least 3 trees from their home. Every neighborhood should have at least 30% canopy cover, and every resident should live within 300 meters of a public green space. So this is a rule that we've integrated into our urban forest management strategy, and it also complements the initiative of the 30-20-10 diversity rule. And next slide, please. So this is another project I wanted to highlight. 2 years ago, we built a net zero greenhouse. The greenhouse is actually powered by solar panels on our main office building, and it's heated by an earth battery system that collects the heat during the day from the sun and releases it, stored underground in a sandbank, and releases it at night. So with this initiative, we're cultivating seeds from native species like sugar maple, red oak, yellow birch, and spruce, etc. We can grow up to 500 seedlings was what we have over the last 2 years. And then I'll quickly go to the next slide. So we're focusing on native tree seeds. So we're collecting seed locally here in Fredericton. These seed are adapted to our local soil conditions, genetically suited for our local climate. The mother trees are selected through the genetic large, well-structured trees that have stood the test of time. The species are also projected to be resilient for the changes in the weather patterns, and we're also preserving the genetic diversity. Next slide, please. So one other little initiative we did over the past year was a food forest. So in the food forest, we collaborated with our local group of children it was from the Multicultural Association that lives right next door to one of our parks. So that we planted a canopy of fruit trees with an understory of shrubs with berries and herbs. This was a fun day of planting with a lot of youth. So as participation in planting and the future maintenance of these trees. It's important to create some signage to educate visitors about the species and the ecological functions. So also to take note that food forests are more than just gardens. They're living ecosystems that strengthen the urban resilience, promote food security, and foster a community well-being. Next slide, please. So I'll just end with some advice for building a resilient urban forest. Practical steps we can take to strengthen their urban forest and improve climate resilience. These recommendations are based on best practices in urban forestry and align with sustainability goals. So the first thing that I want to emphasize is start with a tree inventory. This is important in understanding your current assets, and it's the foundation for an effective planning. Inventories help track species diversity, the health and the canopy coverage. As we talked about, our high percentage of maples, that's a result of not having an inventory of your urban forest. So set realistic goals for canopy cover. Goals should reflect local conditions and community priorities. Leverage partnerships and grants. Collaborate with NGOs and government programs and private partners to secure funding and technical support. Prioritize native and climate resilient species. These species are better adapted to local conditions and future climate scenarios, reducing maintenance costs and improving survival rates. And engage with the community, educate and volunteer groups, build public support and stewardship programs. This will ensure long-term success. Also use technology in planning, like the LiDAR I showed earlier. And there's free GIS data out there. These help identify planting opportunities and monitor canopy changes. And plan for long-term maintenance. Planting trees is only the first step, so ongoing care and pest management are essential for sustaining an urban forest. So in my closing remarks, I just wanted to say that these actions create the the framework for resilience, biodiverse urban forests that develop ecological, social, and economic benefits. So municipalities should view trees as a critical infrastructure, not just for their aesthetics. Next slide. So I just like to thank you again for inviting me to speak, and I will hand it over to Sharon.
Yeah. Here we are. My name's Sharon McGugan, president of the Garden City Conservation Society in Richmond, BC, and lifelong resident of Richmond, BC. Slide. Our society was born out of the saving of the Garden City lands, 136 acres in the center of Richmond 25 years ago. Our original name, the Garden City Lands Coalition, describing the kitchen table kind of movement that largely saved the lands, became the Garden City Conservation Society after the lands were saved. Our society is 100% volunteer. Next slide, please. Protecting habitat and biodiversity is hard. There are more losses than wins. Our challenge as a society was to find ways to mitigate ecological loss in our community. We decided that it was better to take action, do restoration of habitat, than to lament loss. We chose the Miyawaki mini forest method because it gets biodiversity into the ground with public engagement. What is a Miyawaki mini forest? In the simplest of terms, it is a small, biodiverse urban forest that grows fast. Next slide, please. November 2022, our society collaborated with a local high school to plant the first Miyawaki forest in Western Canada with a grant from Tree Canada. We were hands-on in all aspects of the forest planting, which included hiring an excavator to prep the planting site. Next slide. Before the forest planting and for public engagement purposes, but also because we needed to learn really fast, we held 2 1-square-meter planting events. These were heavily promoted events with performers and various activities. Everyone was invited, including members from 3 levels of government. We launched Earth Day, April 2022 with the first one. Next slide. Our second one fell on the September fall equinox. Our, unfortunately, former MLA, Henry Yao, is shown viewing the 6-month-old first 1-square-meter of forest. He was a big supporter from the start, and 2 years later initiated the planting of Miyawaki number 4 in a city park and provided 120 volunteers. Next slide. Of course, the real question is, how did our society move from an adversarial position, saving the Garden City lands from development, to working together? Hard question. All I can say is our society believes that we're stronger if we work together. Sometimes bridge building is as simple as listening and understanding others' points of views. A city and a grassroots conservation society have different ways of getting things done, different objectives. But what do we have in common? That's the key point. We are both committed to getting trees and biodiversity into the ground through public engagement. Conservation, education, and public engagement make powerful partners. Next slide. This photo is from the first collaboration we did with the city. and it was the first Miyawaki forest in a public park in Western Canada, Earth Day 2023. It was also part of a pilot for the relaunch of the federal government's 2 billion trees initiative. When we plant biodiversity, we plant for the future, for today's children and those of tomorrow. Next slide. We've lost 3 billion birds in North America since the 1970s, and the number one reason is habitat loss. The only thing that makes sense is to plant biodiversity. Birds need food sources and homes. We take those necessities away when we develop without the needs of wildlife in mind. This photo is by a Richmond birder, Melissa Hafting, taken in a local natural park that has lots of mature coniferous trees because decades ago, a conservationist, Will Pollock, had planted seedlings on his property that became Pollock Park. What we plant now, together with ensuring its protection, is important for the future, for birds and humans alike. May our children's children see the same backyard birds that we've grown up with. That's a good goal. Next slide. Miyawaki number 8 was planted September 2025 on Bridgeport Trail on city-owned parkland. We're super excited about this project. Backstory. A development was slated to be built on the last old field in North Richmond. A biologist had documented barn owls hunting there over a 10-year period. In compensation for the loss, the developer agreed to restore old field on 3 city park sites. Bridgeport Trail is one of them. A Miyawaki forest was proposed at this location because we plant upper canopy trees that grow fast. These trees will provide nesting opportunities and good vantage points for barn owls and other raptors. This is one example of how ecological loss could be restored. Next slide. Our society spoke at the public meeting for the same development site. We managed to save 54 mature trees from being cut, an unbelievable win. The original plans, which called for cutting a mature forest to install a typical park nestled in the center of the development, were changed. This is something that rarely happens because by the time a development plan gets to a public hearing, a lot of time and money has already gone into its making. Later, when public input was asked for the new park plan, we spoke again. This time we proposed a natural park with biodiversity. Somehow the fates were with us and this too was accepted. It is important to speak. Sometimes good stuff happens. Next slide. Given our legacy connection to the Garden City lands, we were excited to install Miyawaki number 5 on the lands November 2024. Funded by the Living Cities Fund through Green Communities Canada and the International Tree Fund from the UK. Who plants with us? Everyone, the public, community groups, PhD students, university staff, researchers, Rotary clubs, youth groups, etc. Notably, we invite environmental sustainability staff from other municipalities to plant with us and/or tour our forests. Many forests in other areas have been planted because of this. In that regard, our forests are great training grounds. Next slide. Here is a video of our May 2025 Miyawaki 6 planting and our first 3-way collaboration between an elementary school, the city, and our society. We are a family that includes the natural world. Video. We're planting right now, before your eyes, the 6th Miyawaki mini forest in Richmond. This is at an elementary school, Spalakwaks Elementary School in Richmond, and over 17 classes have been putting their hands in the earth to lovingly plant these native species, over 30 native species in the Miyawaki forest. And this forest will grow quickly, and in 25 years, it will be a mature forest. And it's a benefit to all, to the birds, to the pollinators, to the humans. It's a beautiful gift that we give to the earth.
When one of the teachers here asked me, what recommendations I would give them for their outdoor learning space, I had suggested why not increase the biodiversity, introduce more native species to the Spalakwaks area, given that they don't actually have a lot. And so that's sort of how it started.
So you see that there's a variety of species planted. We have upper canopy trees. These trees will grow very, very tall. They'll be like the bones of the forest. We have lower canopy trees, shrubs, pollinator plants.
Wow.
And all of the plants they grow very fast because they're all looking for light. And when you plant so densely together, they grow very, very fast.
This particular group is really fun to work with. I think the entire school has come through here in small groups, and they seem so keen, so willing to plant and get their hands dirty. Love it.
The Miyawaki mini forests are amazing thing to happen on Earth because they can grow 10 times faster. They all got the native species of the land where we plant.
Will be pathways because this project is in a school community. They'll have a learning area in the center.
Wow.
Is coming to the center.
What's really beautiful about this project that I love so much is the fact that the entire school, all 400 something students, all 17 divisions, and every single teacher had a chance to come out here and be part of the planting. Even if they didn't get to plant because they were helping transport, they touched a plant or they touched a tree. And they know that each kid knows that what they're doing has impact into the future.
We're Okay, thank you. That video was just finalized like just a couple of days ago. We're quite excited. We feel that change won't really take place around protecting and/or restoring biodiversity until hearts and minds are moved to do it. We've also discovered that people really love to plant these little forests of hope. People leave with a sense of accomplishment and perhaps most importantly, empowerment, a powerful antidote to eco-anxiety. Know, understand, love, then protect. My words are paraphrased from a quote by a Senegalese forestry engineer, Baba Dioum, in 1968. He said, "In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught." Next slide. So get that first forest in the ground. It really makes a difference to have an example. Don't be afraid to fail. I can tell you it was hard work figuring out getting an excavator and doing a lot of things we did, but you can do it. Develop relationships. Everything gets done that way. And also it is the way the forest works. So it's a good example to follow. Find ways of working together. We're stronger when we do. Celebrate biodiversity and show respect for ourselves, for others, for the earth, and always, always give gratitude. Next slide. In 1976, Akira Miyawaki planted a biodiverse forest around his office at Yokohama University as an experiment. 3 years later, the university planted a forest on campus using Professor Miyawaki's method. This is what, the slide on the left, this is what that forest looks like 50 years later. It's never just one person working alone, but sometimes it is one person that initiates a movement or a small group of people sitting around a kitchen table who decide that 136 acres of land needs to be saved. Planting biodiversity is a good idea. Thank you, Akira Miyawaki, for showing us how to do it. The photo at the right screenshot was given to me. My husband and I were in Japan last summer, and I love it because it was taken very close to the end of his life, and there he is in front of the tree, fist raised, still fighting the good fight. I have a lot of admiration for this man. Next slide. So I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity to speak today. Thank you, World Wildlife Fund Canada and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for both the opportunity to speak, but also to listen and view the other wonderful presentations today. You're doing such fine work. And I know that there's so many people out there that are doing equally fine work. And so thanks to you too. Thank you. All done.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And thank you as well to Keenan and to Kate for the inspiring presentations. I know we're getting tight on time, but I want to get to a couple of questions because there's been some good ones in the chat, and I think really inspired, especially by your kind of ending message there, Sharon, around the power of people and connection. So I'm going to do my best to piece together a couple of questions just so we can answer things kind of together. There's a lot that have come in. But sometimes there's resistance to planting. One of the questions for you, Sharon, was about whether or not you had any resistance from the school district in terms of actually planting on their land and in partnership with them. And then other people have commented on, sometimes native species might not be the popular choice because they drop branches or needles or things that, that can cause harm. So what is your sort of message or approach to really getting that support or getting people on board with this type of project? And this could be for you, Sharon, but also Keenan and Kate. Please feel free to weigh in.
Well, that's first school project that we did. The school board was not completely with us, but I think it's because it was something quite new, and they were worried because for them, when they look at it, it's the budget and how are we going to maintain, and we don't want to maintain. We have limited resources. It's all of those things, but we did do it, and that's why it's important to sometimes just get that forest in the ground, because then you start to develop relationships around that forest. And so now things have evolved where we're working collaboratively. That video was a video of ourselves, the city, and the school board working together. So I think it's just, well,
Start small, work your way up.
yeah, no, follow its relationship building, and we have a relationship with the natural world and we are part of that natural world, and that's about all I need to say, I think.
That's great. And Keenan, I saw there was a follow-up question about the food forest, and again, that's sort of speaking to the sort of narrative around what we plant and if it can potentially impact people in a negative way as opposed to the positives that we're looking for. Is that something that you've had to deal with in Fredericton, and how have you approached that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always questions that are brought forward when it comes to, I do get a lot of calls about acorns dropping from trees, especially in the fall, and how that can be a nuisance. But like I spoke about, one of the public engagement and educating people of why those species are important, and involving the community from the start is usually key to avoiding some of those, frustrations. The food forest from the get-go, we use that as a community project so that they were they kind of took the lead on that project itself, and we didn't really get any pushback from the community. I guess overall it became a good story. Um, and if anything, it was asked if it was going to continue elsewhere in other places along some of our trail networks and places where we could expand that in the future.
That's great. And I'm going to combine a couple more questions here too around the climate resiliency piece for tree species. And Kate, you've talked a lot about the importance of native species, and in Keenan, you spoke to assisted migration and planting some that are non-native but are expected to be well adapted. Are there, from your side, are there any internal requirements to have native species versus other species, or how do you make those decisions between planting native versus planting something that might be non-native but might be well adapted to the future climate conditions? Do you try to find a balance?
I guess I'll start there. Yeah, so I guess when at all possible, our typical planting list would favor to the native species. When it comes to assisted migration and introducing some of the other species, it would be more of a trial at this point, knowing that we did do in our urban forest strategy of some of the weather patterns and temperatures and species that we would feel. I mean, those are just models, but species that may be at risk of not thriving in our environment for in years to come. So it's just to be open-minded of how what is the urban forest going to look like, and how are those species going to do and fare well in the future predicted, I guess, modeled climates that we face.
I would maybe just add to that. Also look at the relationships, kind of going to Sharon's point. So part of it is the relationship with wildlife around it and which species of wildlife are you trying to support, but also relationships with people. And of course, a lot of people use trees for tea or for food or for other types of things. And that's important, even if it's not necessarily a native species, but you want to grow apples and you can, or cherries or whatever, that part of it becomes important too. But going back to this question about when people see it as a negative, it really is all about um, how we see the relationships we have with these trees as well. So certainly avoid invasive species, but in native species are best for native wildlife, but there is a role for non-native, non-aggressive species as well when they're providing other benefits either to wildlife or to us in our urban communities that use them.
Great, thank you. I'm going to squeeze in one other quick question because I think you could probably answer this one quickly, Keenan. But did you use any online tools, or when you did the quantifying the tree planting benefits to show the return on investment or the value of the urban forest? Did you use specific tools? Was that led by a consultant team?
Yeah, so I guess you're talking about the values of yeah, so that was kind of led by the consultant that worked with us through our urban forest strategy. So I'm not sure on the calculators that would calculate those specifically, but
Okay, good to know. All right. Well, thanks, folks, for sticking around for a few extra minutes. I know we are a little pressed for time on the questions there, but I want to first thank all of you again for your presentations. And there was a lot of positive comments and love coming through the chat and with the emojis as well. So thanks very much. I'm going to wrap us up with just a couple of quick comments. First is just a reminder about the workshop that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, which is designed to support those who are interested in applying for urban forestry plans or studies. Some of the things that Keenan spoke about and with regards to tree inventorying and understanding what you have, these are the kinds of things that can be supported through this type of work. It really helps you build the foundation for tree planting projects that can advance your biodiversity outcomes. So if you're interested in joining and want to learn more about this funding offer, please do sign up with the QR code or the link that's in the chat. Otherwise, there's a few ways you can stay connected with us. I encourage everyone, if you're not already, to subscribe to our newsletter, FCM Connect. That's where we will have more information about events such as this, or information about our funding, and other resources that you can use to support your projects. You can also find the link to our website to learn more about GCCC, as well as some contact info. If you have a project idea and you're not sure where it might fit, or you're looking for some support to get it off the ground, please reach out to us. We have a great team of staff who are very excited about these types of projects and love to help. So if you want to find out more, please reach out to us, and we'd love to chat. And with that, I will say thank you to everybody for your time and attendance today. And again, thank you to everybody, Sharon, Keenan, and Kate, for your presentations. We'll have a survey that will pop up when you close the webinar, so please take a few minutes to fill that out. And with that, I will let everybody go back to their days, and thank you again.